Welcome to another episode of Rockwts Talk. Got my boy Roosh. We are back just in time for the draft and a lot of stuff going on in the NBA. The Celtics won the championship. Trade rumors, big trades happening. One of the key trades that just went down was I guess I don't know if it's a massive trade or not. To me, it's significant to the Rockets. The Oklahoma City Thunder just traded Josh Giddey to the Chicago Bulls straight up with no picks attached for Alex Caruso, 1-for-1. What are your initial thoughts on that, bro?
It's crazy. First of all, Oklahoma City gets better, right? Josh Giddey did not fit into what they want to do. He does not fit into what makes them better, right? He needs the ball in his hands to be effective. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That relegated Josh Giddey to an off-ball role. Everybody knows he can't shoot. There's only so much you can get out of him, right? It seemed like they succeeded this season in spite of playing Josh Giddey, and I think they were open about that. Mark Daigneault would talk about we're not gonna we're gonna get the reps in and see how this goes and try to develop it. Obviously, didn't work out. Now they add Caruso, who is a good 3-point shooter, who is an excellent defender. The only weird thing for OKC for me is that Caruso kind of duplicates an element they already have. They have Lou Dort. I don't remember what he finished shooting from three this season, but I think this season he actually shot well, whereas throughout his career, he's not a good 3-point shooter. They have Cason Wallace, right? So to add Caruso, he's awesome. And playing him over Cason Wallace probably is better at the moment, pending whatever, Cason Wallace's ceiling is. But anyway, so it's just a little bit redundant, and that's really the only criticism that I can think of. Criticism for Chicago is that OKC's loaded with draft capital, and you would have to think that if you knew how to negotiate, that lifting at least one of those picks off of OKC, like they could get rid of two of those picks and not even think twice about it, right? They have that many picks. So to get none of them, zero, has to be a disappointment. I do think if OKC keeps if they keep DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, I think Josh Giddey could actually make that offense flow, and you got Kobe White in there as well. It actually puts Josh Giddey in a position to thrive because he's not a bad basketball player. He's a pretty good basketball player. He has his flaws. He can't shoot. He's not great at defense, but he has good size. He's really high IQ. He's like a point guard Şengün, basically. So if you give him some offensive weapons on the wing, like DeMar DeRozan, like Zach LaVine, especially athletic ones, I feel like it could work. And Kobe White, who had a really good season last season, and also Vucevic, a center he can dump it down to. Now the rumors are that Chicago's going to put all these dudes on the market, and if that's the case, then the lack of draft capital is kind of puzzling to me. Maybe the counter argument is, hey, we're going to trade these other guys for draft capital, and the focus for trading Caruso was that we wanted like an actual player. Because Josh Giddey's going to enter restricted free agency. They're going to be able to keep him, match any offer that comes in. So they basically get like a young prospect that a winning team didn't have use for. So that's good for them. That's what I think. The last piece is, what is Caruso's contract? Does he have 1 year left? I think he has 1 year left.
I think it's either 1 or 2 years on a very team-friendly contract.
Very team-friendly money. Very, very good money, especially for what Caruso brings to the table. But I think I'll check that. But that's the only downside. I think Caruso is eligible for his extension. I think it's 1 year and he's eligible for an extension. That's what I think it is. And I think I saw somewhere that OKC has interest in re-signing him, whatever. So we'll see how that goes. But those are my thoughts. What about you?
I'm going to take the optimistic side from both teams. I think it's a great trade for both sides. Obviously, Oklahoma City, you're adding even though it is redundant, but to me, there's certain skill sets you can never have too much of. And shooting and defense is one of them, especially in one player. And he brings that. Watching the Boston Celtics, you see that all their guys are pretty much good defenders, good shooters. When you're making deep playoff runs, having guys that you can't just win with 5 guys. Like you need at least 8 to 9 deep of really, really good elite role players, and I think Caruso gives them that ability to be able to play deep and go deep into their bench and even kick guys, like you said, like Cason Wallace down a little bit, Isaiah Joe down a little bit, where they can get more secondary minutes and having to depend on them. For the Chicago side, your trade, I think if they could have gotten picks, but Sam Presti, he is one of the best general managers in the NBA and very stingy trader. He's developing that kind of Danny Ainge thing where if you do a Sam Presti trade, you probably got hoed. But
Yeah.
like if the trade went through, you got hoed, bro. Like no matter what happens. But a young player for them, like you're just resetting. It's a position of need. If they did keep the current team, it's like a Lonzo Ball kind of
Yep.
insurance type deal. You saw what they look like with Lonzo running point, and that's what they lacked. You look at their team: DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Vucevic, random wings that they threw out in there, and Kobe White, who to me is a score first guard. Nobody really, all these finishers with no play starters, and I think it gives them a bit of optionality in the way they want to build their team. As far as like with Giddy and OKC, to me the interesting thing that I like about this, bro, is this is probably one of the first guys within the Jalen Green class that is in that top rated group of guys that has been moved. And to me, this is a
Yep.
precursor, right?
Yep.
OKC is about a step ahead of the Rockets in their development. We're hoping that next year will be our second, first or second round exit year, like they just had. And because they're a step ahead of the Rockets, the decisions they have to make are about a year ahead of us as well. And I think that for them, looking at a team that wants to contend for a championship, when you start having players that, even though you love them, even though they are players that you may have spent draft capital on and invested a lot of time in, when it's time to win, it's time to win. And I think
Yep.
for what the Rockets fans can take away from this is that these decisions are coming down the line. Like I'm not saying it's Jalen or Şengün or anybody, and we'll talk about some stuff with Şengün, but this is the NBA, and I've been saying this for years. This stuff is coming. Guys are going to get moved.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's funny because you see Josh Giddey traded for Alex Caruso, and then it makes you think about the conversations about trading Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges, right? Mikal Bridges is on the high end. Like Alex Caruso is a good player. Mikal Bridges is better, right?
Right.
If the Thunder traded Josh Giddey for Mikal Bridges, like, whoa, watch out, right? They're my finals favorite had they done that, right? So it's just interesting to visit that conversation because there was a lot of talk of Jalen Green being the centerpiece of a deal for Mikal Bridges. What's interesting though is that OKC kind of sets the market, right? Like we're not going to give you a pick. We're just doing a straight player swap, right? So hopefully that's in Houston's favor. Hopefully that lowers the price when if Houston wants to make a trade for one of these guys that's due for an extension to go get a winning player, right? Like the trade they're talking about maybe for Marcus Smart. If you saw that, and we can get into that. Another interesting thing is I looked it up. Caruso isn't expiring. He's expiring 1 year left. This 24-25 season, final year on his deal, 9.9 million. So really good contract there. Also, to your point about Lonzo Ball, I agree with that. Yeah, they were good with a real point guard running the show, right? Because they have the talent, but you need the
Yeah.
piece that makes it all work. Um, Obviously, Lonzo more athletic, much better 3-point shooter, excellent defender, and those are three things that Josh Giddey's not. So that will be a drop off. Josh Giddey is though a more creative playmaker in my opinion, more of a true point guard. Lonzo can play point guard and he does, and he plays it well. Josh Giddey has more of that natural feel and seeing the court, manipulating the court. He's much better at manipulating the court and executing the pass. So it'll be interesting to see what they become. But yeah, I mean, look, you look at the finals, like you said, Derek White, Drew Holiday. OKC has got a stable of dogs, man, switchable wing perimeter defenders who can shoot the three. And if I still think they need one guy next to SGA to be like the favorite, one
Right.
offensive guy, maybe Chet can become that. But man, they got better. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean
Interesting.
they really did. One thing I've been hearing from not even just Rockets fans, just around the NBA about the idea of patience. When they refer to the Celtics, like you look at the Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum combination, and people try to extrapolate that to mean something for their teams, and for the Rockets is like. And I think for me, I just wanted to say this on there, like with the patience thing, they were patient with a team that was a playoff contender. There's a difference between being patient with a team that is perennial Eastern Conference Finals, contenders and second round and conference finals. To me, if you have a team that's getting you there, then you can be patient because basically all you want is an opportunity. Because at 1 year could be your year where you get lucky and make it to the finals and win it, right? It's a difference between that and a team that's not making the playoffs and being patient. So once again, tying this back to the Josh Giddey and where the Rockets are, being patient is only valid if you're actually winning. The Timberwolves can be patient. Dallas can be patient. OKC can be patient, right? They can keep their neutral, their central core together and flip pieces around like Boston did. Kyrie, Kemba, just bringing different guys to come in to try to keep their core together. But that core has to show you that they can win at the playoff level. And for the Rockets, they haven't shown that yet. So once again, if you guys hear some of these names, guys on trade rumors, blah, 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 it's anything could happen with the Rockets. Anything could happen because until they can show that this is a viable playoff team, I don't blame. I've said this early in the summer. I don't blame the Rockets for trying to turn over every rock to try to put themselves in a position to be a Minnesota or something this coming year.
That's the name of the game. And to your point, OKC was patient and they won 57 games and got the 1 seed. Like, man, if that is, I think we talked about it previously, that is the ideal season for a team that's developing, right? A team that did not have those kinds of expectations to now achieve 57 wins, 1 seed. They got to the second round. They didn't get to the conference finals, so that's a letdown. But then they go back and land whatever they get, the number 10 or 11 pick from the Rockets. And then they go pick up an Alex Caruso for one of their previous prospects that they were patient with that everyone could see, wasn't really going to fit. And they use that to upgrade and they're still in position to win. Like that's the position you want to be in. So I agree with you. I mean, and look, part of the reason they made this decision, a big part of the reason, a huge part of the reason they made this decision is because they were not going to extend him. He's about to be a restricted free agent. They made the decision that we are not going to extend him. So had they waited, had they tried to pull this in the summer of next year or the trade deadline of this coming season, if Josh Giddey played and still wasn't like improving, then every game that Josh Giddey plays and does not actually improve, he loses value, right? And that's something to consider as well. Like OKC, Josh Giddey did not have a great season for them. He had a very up and down season for them. It was pretty clear that they maximized their potential with him off the court, and someone else filling in as the fifth guy, whoever that was, right? So the Rockets came away from last season not really knowing with Jalen specifically, and some people might still have questions about Şengün. So those are the two guys due for contract extensions. So the Rockets have to be very, we haven't heard any talks about Jalen or Şengün extensions, and this is the summer to do it if they're going to do it, right? Otherwise, they go to restricted free agency. So just tying all of that in to your point.
Yeah, and I think that to me, once again, being in that playoff setting is a big deal. If we had made the playoffs, I think they would have signed at least one of these guys for sure. But we didn't, so we're still here. But we did want to get into this article by Kelly Iko from The Athletic, where he talks about the draft and some of the notes, his notes from the Rockets' perspective. It's called Houston Rockets Draft Notebook 2.0 Big Board Debates, Domino Effect, and more. It's going to be in the link of the description of this pod or video, wherever you're consuming it at. Roosh, a lot of interesting quotes and takeaways from this article. I think it has, kind of a little bit of everything. I highlighted some of the things that it talked about. I guess I could just go off first. So to me, one interesting thing that I haven't talked about yet. Earlier in the summer, we kind of knew about the Marcus Smart thing with Memphis. I think Memphis has shown interest in the Rockets' third pick pretty much since we acquired that during the lottery. But now we have Charlotte in the mix and Portland as teams that Kelly says are interested in moving up to 3. I remember I got a lot of people saying that who would want to draft a 3 in a week draft? And I'm like, bro, we talked about that. Like their teams are always going to want to move up. Their teams in different contexts, different situations. Some teams like Chicago would just die to have any young prospect that they can and give their fans some hope to say that at least we have X and X guy. There's a team out there that would love to have Reed Shepard. They would love to have Arisha Share or one of these guys on there. So the Rockets are going to have suitors that are willing to do so. To me, I like the Memphis buzz. I feel like it's real because of the Marcus Smart connection. Charlotte and Portland, I'm not really sure what we would get from them. But I think that the Memphis thing, I talked about the Smart thing. I feel like him as a guard fits what Ime likes to do. He is going to be the third guard. Ime love to run a lot of 3-4 guard lineups in Boston. So I don't see that as a redundancy with Fred VanVleet, whether it's Jalen the man or anybody else is there to have Smart out there playing the 1, 2, or the 3. I feel like this is a thing that is actively going to happen. And it does lead into another quote that we're going to talk about in a bit. But what was something that you thought?
So to respond to what you're saying about Memphis, also the Rockets have previously traded with Memphis, right? Steven Adams. So there's a transaction history, and Chris Wallace, who I think is the director of scouting with the Rockets right now, he plays some type of role in the Rockets front office. Was I think the Memphis GM or assistant GM. So there is an actual connection to Memphis, and then of course Marcus Smart and Ime Udoka, right? So all of that together, and combined with the fact that in the article Kelly mentions that they could move back for a player like Dalton Connect.
Yep.
And that's what I've been on, is what I was on a month or so ago. I haven't really paid much attention, but it seemed like that was a thing at one point, and people just totally shifted away and got really like dialed in on like who do we take at 3. For me, the whole time though, I was like, shit, move back, pick up a player like that, and because he feels a need, right? He shooting, also athletic, decent size, 6'6", so has more upside as well. And then you pick up more draft capital. So tying those two, like tying the logical move together with the actual connections that the Rockets would have to want to make that deal with Memphis, and then also with Memphis losing Steven Adams and probably wanting to replace him, you could see them wanting to move up to 3 to get like Klingon or something like that. So it all just, to me, that all makes sense. That's what stood out to me about the trade talk.
Yeah, and it's
I'll say this. Oh, continue.
nah. Go ahead, finish, then I'll connect.
Well, I was going to talk about a different. He mentioned Charlotte, and I was just going to say, and we don't have to talk about it now. We can talk about it later. But what would a trade with Charlotte look like? I was trying to think of what that would even look like. Who Charlotte would be moving up for? I thought that was a little funny.
I mean, we can talk about it now. So Charlotte, obviously, they drafted what's his name? Brendan. What's the kid name? Miller. In last year's draft, they have LaMelo Ball. They
Mark
have
Williams.
they have some interesting young players. I would probably think they probably want some shooting on the team. I would say that's probably the main thing that they would like out of the draft. Maybe they are fans of Reed Shepherd. I don't see them as a Klingon team unless they're done with Williams. But yeah, I think that the shooting and the potential two-way versatility at the top of the draft is attractive to a lot of teams. Here's another thing that people need to factor in: the salaries for these. Like there's a upside and downside to having drafts like this. A lot of the times, the drafts that have a lot of high prospects, you have to invest so much time into them that you almost have to take an L as a franchise for their developmental years, like the Spurs are doing right now with Wemby, because they're not going to be ready. When it's a draft filled with role players, go ahead.
Like the Rockets did,
For
for the
like
last 3
half
years.
a decade, yeah, as we're doing right now, as the Rockets are doing. But when it's like role players, they're plug and play because you're not depending on them. You can go grab a dude like a Reed Shepherd or a Klingon. He's your backup, blah blah blah. Right? Day one, you don't skip a beat as a franchise. They're serviceable. Hopefully, at that high, you hope they can play right away, and they're making what $8-9 million. So you're going to get a utility player that's going to contribute a lot to your team, not on like you have to depend your franchise on them for a pretty good contract for the next 4 or 5 years. So I can see why, to me, especially in this new CBA, if I'm a bubble contender or a team that wants to contend, put together a nice team to try to make the playoffs, getting a rookie that can play right away is actually an upside thing for me. Like I don't see why teams wouldn't want to move up and try to get a role player.
Well, especially if they're trying to get someone with potential upside. Like if I'm
Exactly.
Charlotte, the only 2 players I could think of that they would want to move up for, because they do have Mark Williams. So I
Yeah.
don't think they're in the Klingon sweepstakes. So I think for them, it's either Sar or Reed Shepard, or
Yep.
maybe Risa Shea. Uh, I don't really, me personally, I don't see the buzz with Risa Shea. Um, I see the highlights, but I don't know. It would confuse me if a team would trade assets to move up to draft Zachary Risa Shea. So I would imagine it would have to be Alex Sar or Reed Shepard. But who would the Rockets even get in that scenario? Like, is there like who's the role player on the Hornets roster that the Rockets would be trading for? PJ Washington previously, but obviously Dallas traded for him, right? Maybe Mark Williams, but why would Charlotte be trading Mark Williams to move up for Klingon? That wouldn't make sense. So who would it be?
Yeah,
I,
I'm not
I don't
sure.
even know.
Maybe possibly for some draft capital in the future,
Yeah.
or I'm not even familiar with their pick situation. One thing though, one thing to pivot a little bit that kind of connects to what we were talking about with the Marcus Smart and Memphis thing is the from Kelly's article. He lists some things. He says here that historically, the brain trust goes to great lengths to ensure a thorough process. A period typically involves debate about individual player rankings before one composite big board is formed. He says now, with Udoka's presence, a significant factor in decision making, various league sources believe Houston's big board planning involves three branches, in addition to the other respective voices in the war room. So, branch one is the upside and positional versatility angle. That's Rafael Stone. Ranked branch two is the analytical angle, courtesy of assistant GM Eli Wittes. And then now a new branch that has entered the Rockets governmental structure is the win now defensive oriented angle from Udoka, which is weird. That I wonder if Kelly got these quotes from the organization. Like, which branch are you
I
with?
mean, it sounds yeah, it sounds so specific. But
Very
look, if you follow the Rockets though, it seems on point.
right.
I tweeted about this, so go look at my timeline if you're watching this. But the Rockets took Jalen Green in 2021. I think that, and this is my opinion. So I'm just gonna this is my read of the situation when you just look at the evidence in front of you. They took Jalen Green because they saw the star upside, right? Rafael Stone probably saw star upside in Jalen Green and was like, yo, wing scorer, classic archetype. Like, we're going to take the gamble on that. I think the analytics team probably wanted Evan Mobley, but they didn't see enough star upside, or they disagreed on the star upside, whatever it was, which is why I think Şengün was the compromise pick. Because if you know, what was it? Kevin Pelton, I think, has his composite or his rankings or whatever, and she had Şengün rated as the number one player out of that draft. The analytics, the analytics grades and the data models loved Şengün, which would indicate that was a Şengün pick. Then you look at the next year, the Rockets were heavily rumored to want Paolo Banchero, right? Obviously, they didn't end up drafting him because they couldn't, because Orlando took him. But star upside, positional versatility, athletic, classic Rafael Stone pick, also from Seattle. And you could argue Tari Eason would be more so in the analytic mold. It almost seemed like there's been this pattern of they take the Rafael Stone, desired pick with their top pick because they believe in a philosophy of trying to get a star, swinging for star upside and trying to use one of those picks to get it. And then they take a more measured analytical pick later in the draft, which might be why they've had some, ups and downs with the star upside type players. But they've gotten more steady production from the dudes drafted 16 and 17. Like Şengün and Tari are arguably their two best players or two best prospects as far as how they performed, right? So it's interesting when you look at it like that. Basically, the Rafael Stone mantra, which might be universally agreed upon, but I'm talking about Kelly's classifications, right? If you take the Rafael Stone category that he listed, the branch, then you get the top prospects they've taken or they've been interested in. Jalen, Paolo Banchero, they ended up with Jabari because obviously we know how that draft went. But Jalen, Paolo Banchero, then Amen Thompson, right? Amen Thompson, positional versatility, super athletic, star upside, check all those boxes. And then Cam Whitmore, I think, was more of a holy shit, this dude fell to us.
Right.
So we're going to take him. But they also, I think, from what I know, had interest in Podziemski. And that was probably the analytical team that graded him well. So it's interesting when you look at it like that. And now you enter the variable of Ime Udoka, which is why I wouldn't quite 100% rule out a guy like Stefan Castle. I feel like that's an Ime Udoka type pick. Maybe Klingon could be an Ime. Like if they're starting to really heat up for Klingon, if what Kelly's saying is true, it's one of two things. Either they're trying to pump up trade talk and trade debate to make teams desperate to trade up because they're like, oh shit, we're going to take Klingon. So if you want that spot, like, yo, Hawks and Spurs, y'all can't just do a 1-4 swap. Other teams, if you want Klingon, like, we're going to take him. It's either that or Ime Udoka is like, yo, I want this kid to anchor my defense. So that's kind of how I take all. But to me, that was the most interesting and important piece of Kelly's article.
That's a great point. I want you to tell me what you think each person's pick is going to be based on their branch of government they're in. So in this draft, who would be the upside and positional versatility pick for the Rockets? If Stone had to say, who do you think he's picking?
Man, if Stone is picking, I think Stone, and this is just me guessing, I think Stone is picking Sar
If he's available.
if he's available.
Right. Okay. Okay. I mean, I think anybody,
Well,
all
hold
three
on.
of them would probably pick Sar.
You got to tell me who goes 1 and 2 though, because
Okay.
I could also see the Rockets really being interested in Reed Shepherd. I could see that as well. I don't know what the analytics on him are, but he could have, the analytic models might love him. He can shoot. They might also see star upside in him, but the positional versatility is not there. But I would say Sar. What about you?
So if I'm going to assume Sar is gone, and then I'm going to say Sar is just off the board. So if not Sar, if I say positional versatility, then I think it's going to be Ristashare for Stone,
Maybe.
just because of the
Maybe.
height, the shooting potential, the defensive versatility potential. I think to me that seems like a Stone type of pick, but that's just me. The Reed Shepherd thing, his analytics are beautiful. The analytics are beautiful. My only issue with them is very limited sample size, and it's the context is it's a bit kind of tricky. He is if you're gonna go to analytical pick, him and Klinging kind of fit that mold. Okay, so I'm guessing you're thinking Eli Wittes would take Reed Shepherd if he had the third pick.
No. Excuse me. I'm thinking Eli Whitus might take. Actually, maybe. Yeah, maybe Reed Shepherd. We'll say Reed Shepherd. Yeah.
Okay, so you got Sar, Reed Shepherd, and then I'm gonna say with the analytical, it'll probably be Reed Shepherd. I think he is all the models, true shooting, and the VORP, all that stuff. He's tops him. But once again, I watch basketball. I watch context. To me, it's a lot of it is cap. But the third
I could also see Stefan Castle randomly checking that box. Not that his game is efficient offensively, but just like measurables, versatility, that whole thing grading out well, kind of like Tari probably did. Just a guess.
He is in that mold. I would say for the win now one, defensive oriented angle from Doka. I'm not gonna say Klingon on it. I know that's what a lot of people. I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna say that's gonna be Castle.
Yeah,
because he's the most, honestly, positional versatility is there. He can play the forward and the guard. Can defend probably 1, 2, 3, possibly 4. To me, he is very Marcus Smart-ish, not as offensively gifted as Marcus Smart. A lot of people forget that when Marcus was at Oklahoma State, he was a hooper. Like, dude was their guy.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't just a defensive anchor. He was a go-to guy. So I don't see that potential yet in Castle. But I'm gonna go with Castle there on the 3. Who's your win now?
So it's either excuse me, it's either Castle or Klingon. Just depends on if you want that player to come as your big or if you want that player to be your wing. The thing with me with Castle is that we talked about OKC duplicating something they already have with Caruso. I think Stefan Castle duplicates something the Rockets already have. I mean, they have Tari Eason, 6'7", 7'2" wingspan, huge hands, switchable, strong, all those things. They have Amen Thompson, who is like, a defensive Swiss Army knife, and super athletic. You could even throw Jayshawn Tate in there. He's 6'4". He's got surprisingly long arms, 6'9". He's not ideal, but he is someone you can just kind of put out there and, make them switchable. Jabari to a kind of a lesser degree, but still like 6'11", positionally versatile, can guard 1 through 4, 1 through 5, depending on the matchup. So the Rockets have a lot of that, and those guys aren't great shooters. I think they're better shooters, except for Amen. I think Jabari and Tari are better shooters than Stephon Castle. But that's my worry with Castle. But yeah, I think if you're going defensive win now, it's got to be either Klingon or Castle.
And with the Castle thing, that's my only thing about him is the offensive, the shooting, which the article does say that's a premium the Rockets are really, really looking to improve, which does beg the question about what the I kind of buried the lead here, that the Rockets probably their top prospect in this, based on the article, like you alluded to, is Donovan Klingon. And then it naturally leads to the questions about the matchup with Şengün. And interestingly enough, it says they have the same agent. And if the politics behind that is kind of funny, because if you're the agent for Şengün and Klingon, you're basically, if you don't want your guy to go to a team where he's taking food off a plate of another guy, or a team where the other guy is better than him, so he can't eat as much as he wants. So I'm sure there's a little kind of like thing there where he may just not want to be on the Rockets just because of Alperen Şengün, where he can go to a team that's going to use him more and feature him as a primary. Now, can they play together? I think yes. I don't buy the Klingon is going to be a shooter. I mean, that's cool that he's hitting them in practices and stuff like that, but in a real NBA game, probably not. I think the onus is going to be on Alperen to become a better shooter, and I think the reason, to me, that's not a problem, because to me, for him to reach his upside, he has to become a better shooter. So that's something he has to do regardless. The fit would not be great. And I just don't, not because of anything. I think Donovan Klingon is going to be good. If the Rockets can get him as a backup, then you probably have to trade Steven Adams, or because I just don't see a need for having guys like Adams and Londale on the roster when you have a young, but Adams could be their vet. That could be a vet. So probably either Londale or Adams, one of those guys have to go. But I'm not mad at Klingon on the Rockets. I actually think, once again, even though some things are redundant, if you can do something, the question with Alperen Şengün, you would ask this about, people have questions about Jalen. I think Alp has some questions that we can only answer in the playoffs. For guys like him that aren't elite defenders, as good as any big man is, unless your offensive game justifies you being on the court in a high leverage moment in the playoffs, you are not going to be on the court in the high leverage moment in the playoffs. There are times, even Rudy Gobert, defensive player of the year, 4 or 5 times, whatever, how many times, should not be on the court because he's a defensive liability. That's just the nature of being a big man. At the end of the day, big men just, they have their roles. But for a player that is a offensive savant, you're the team's offensive engine, like a Jokic. Is your offense good enough at that level to justify the team supplementing your defensive issues? And I think Şengün has to answer that question. And to me, that's the biggest question he has to answer for the Rockets, because otherwise, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, you go with him and you try to build a team around him that helps them win. He still does have to answer that. I think having a Klingon does give them some versatility. I don't see those things as like they're connected in a way. Real quick before you go, there's an ironic situation this happened. I don't know if you saw this. Brook Lopez, some reports about the Bucks saying that they want to move on from Brook because they need more defensive versatility or want to play a different style, more flexibility on defense, which is ironic that the Rockets were twerking for Brook, and the team that he finessed them for is basically like, you know what, we kind of are good on him. Like, that was funny to me.
Hilarious. I mean, look, let me just touch on that first. The Celtics just won the championship, and Kristaps Porzingis missed more than half of the playoffs. He missed 2 whole rounds, right?
And barely played
at
in
least
the fourth quarter. Yeah,
2 whole rounds, and then part of the finals, right? Now they had a weaker run to the finals, so that's that's a legitimate argument. But they beat the Mavs uh, with Kristaps Porzingis coming off the bench and then not playing, and they beat them. They were 1-1 in the games he sat out, I think, and then he like barely played or played a limited role in that last game after coming back from the injury. Before that, came off the bench, played like 20 something minutes in the first game. My point is, the Mavericks. I'm sorry, the Celtics took the Mavericks out without a rim protector for over half of the playoffs, and they won it all, right? Positional, like the Rockets, the Warriors and the Rockets, people thought that they were going to be the blueprint for offense, and it was going to be like, oh, it's always going to be this way offensively. I think more than anything, they were the blueprint for the new defense of the NBA, right? The Rockets, people focused on the Warriors offense, but they were switchable 1-4 at all times, usually 1-5. But Steph was able to get away enough defensively to make it work. And then they had KD, phenomenal defender, Klay Thompson, phenomenal defender, Draymond Green, all-time defender, right? And Andre Iguodala, like phenomenal defender, right? So or they had Sean Livingston with great length or whoever it was, right? So, and then the Rockets obviously countered that. And if you remember the Western Conference Finals in 2018, it was a slugfest. There were a couple blowouts, but the important games were slugfest, like 95-94 type games. Those two pivotal games the Rockets won to take the 3-2 lead. So, and then how'd they do that, right? Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Chris Paul, James Harden was able to, fit in the scheme defensively. Luka Mbamute obviously got hurt, but he was there throughout the regular season. So, and Clint Capella was playing some of the best perimeter defense of his career, and it was a switchable big. So it all worked. Anyways, my point in all of that is to say rim protection is a niche. It is not the game. It is something you definitely want on the roster. You want the option to have rim protection, but you don't have to build around rim protection. You can be a championship team that builds around rim protection. The Bucks were. Certainly can be. My point is it's not imperative. Basketball is a game more so than anything, than any other sport, in my opinion. Basketball is a game of styles, and you can dictate the style if you are the best team because there's different ways to do it. The game's gotten homogenous in a lot of ways today with the three-point shooting and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you can dictate the style. That's why you see the fluctuation, right? Denver won it last season with Jokic, and then the Celtics win it with like 5 out wings, So, anyways, say all that to say that you can take a Klingon, and I think that having a Klingon would help. I think that Klingon and Şengün can get along together on the court. Alpi's going to have to be able to shoot, but one thing that he can do, even without the shooting, is he's a gifted passer, and he can actually break defenders down off the dribble. So he can create. Right. He doesn't have to be fed, right? We saw him a lot, like take it from the elbow or the top of the key, like face up, his little goofy, slow off the dribble. So if Klingon is able to like catch the ball and finish at the basket, I feel like that can work. You can run inverted pick and roll, or you can have Alpi switching, taking it off the dribble from the wing, drawing an extra defender, and then like up fake, dropping it off, dunk. There's ways it can work. Obviously, it will be super enhanced by Şengün's ability to shoot a three if he's able to. And then defensively, if Klingon is able to do, the things that he's advertised to do, there will certainly be lineups that you can play them both against. So I'm not worried about that. You got to also remember Steven Adams is coming off an injury. There's no guarantee that Steven Adams is going to be healthy this season. He's supposed to be healthy, but like, we don't know how his body's going to hold up. He had a knee injury. He's in his 30s now. He missed, I think, like a whole year and a half. So don't take that for granted. And then Adams is expiring. Jock Landale is expiring. I think Jock Landale's deal is somewhere around 8-9 mil, something like that. And then Steven Adams, I think, is somewhere around like 12 million a year. I'm not sure. But the point is, it's just aggregatable, expiring salary that the Rockets can use in a trade to make it attractive to a team that wants salary off of its books. And then you have Klingon right there as your insurance. So I think it could work. Let me ask you this. If you have the number 1 overall pick for the Rockets, who are you drafting? Like, who do you want?
Oh, it would be Sarr. It would be Sarr. I still think I think the model the Celtics used with Al Horford on that team is still a good model for Şengün because I like his defensive IQ. Now, his ability may not always be there, but one thing about him, when you watch him, he understands the game of basketball. And if if I had a player type, I want an athletic guy playing that low man or that weak side help instead of Jalen or Jabari. You know what I mean? Because in our defense, that position is so important because honestly, a lot of times you want to funnel guys into that help and rotate off of that. We just didn't have the body types to really play the type of defense that we want to with playing that high hedging and all the stuff that Ime Udoka wants to do. To me, the reason, remember, they started off the season playing a lot of high hedging, and then they went back to Şengün playing more of a drop. I don't think it was because of Şengün. I think it was because of the weak side help wasn't there. So because if you're going to high hedge, you're leaving everybody else assed out, and if you're not going to have somebody to clean it up back there, you're just cooked. So I think that they need to address that. And teams are smart because they force us into alignments that make us have to put a weak person in that, because the NBA is smart guys. They watch film, so they know all these things. And I think having a guy like Sar back there allows you to do so much defensively, allows Şengün more freedom. I want Şengün navigating in the middle of the pick and roll, making the decisions, like being that middle linebacker in the middle of our defense while you have all these athletes around him, so he can know when to funnel, who to step up on. I know he watches film. He knows all this. So those are things I want to see. So I'm going Sar for sure.
Yeah, I think I have to agree just because, and for the record, I'm not thrilled about Sar. I think he's got some holes in his game. He looks potentially like a bust might be drastic, but he just doesn't look like he can't rebound very well for how big he is. His shot blocking looks, just from what I've seen, and I don't really know much, but it looks like he's more of like a weak side type shot blocker instead of just like face up rim protection, rim deterrence. He's a little slow of foot, at least from the highlights. Maybe that, maybe I'm tripping. Maybe it'll translate correctly to the NBA, but it just looks like he's like a little slow to be like the guy, But I like that he can shoot. I like that he does have some IQ with the ball. He can create a little bit with the ball and pass. He has some playmaking potential. He has shooting potential. So if there are, and he's obviously got incredible size, 7'1", 7'5" wingspan. So if he can put the upside and the positives together, he could be, basically I would draft him for the potential. After him though, I really don't know.
Yeah.
Like who I'm, you know what I mean? After him, it becomes, okay, what do we want? Do we want rim protection and size and rebounding? Donovan Clingan. Do we want movement shooting? Trade down, Dalton Connect. Do we want to take a swing at a potential star and be prepared for a bust if he's a bust? Reed Shepherd. Do we want a safe pick, someone we can see contributing to our rotation? Stephon Castle, defensively, okay. Do we want to try to take another swing at the 6'10", finesse scoring wing?
Yeah, Montes.
Zachary Reese-Shea, So it's like, or Buzelis, right? So that's how I see it. It's kind of scary, which is why trading out is fine with me. But at the same time, I will say, more than any other draft that we've been through in these last few years, I really don't care. They're playing with house money. We were not supposed to get the number 3 pick, so like, whatever. I guess having said that out loud, I would take whoever the analytics model thinks has the most upside.
Right.
I would take that because the Rockets' internal analytic model seems to be pretty on point. So I would pick the player I would strongly consider the player that model values.
That's a great point. I would say that too. And there's really no wrong pick.
There isn't.
Yeah, it's like all of these guys have to me the same. The difference between the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's not really that much. It's just really at this point, this is a draft you have to draft for fit, in my opinion, and just pick the fit that you think makes your team better, like the most out of everybody else. Now, one thing before we do get off, in the article, Kelly did say that the Pelicans called the Rockets about a potential trade involving Brandon Ingram, and he said it's a rumor. Let me throw that out there. And Alperen Şengün and the Rockets declined straight up. Mm-hmm. What I found interesting about that is the Pelicans would want Alperen Şengün. I'm not sure if to pair him with Zion, which would be a incredibly weird fit. Two,
For the record, it would. There's a lot of potential with Zion's athleticism off the ball and Şengün's
yeah,
creating, but defensively and just like
yeah,
it would just be weird.
that would be terrible. Terrible defense there. Now, yeah, offensively that'd be nuts. Now, to me, okay, Pelicans want Şengün or they value him. To me, it also does, and I seen this, and I think the same. I saw this. My friend Mike on Twitter pointed this out, and I totally agree with it. It does set a baseline. It sets a marker to show you where the Rockets perceive Alperen Şengün in the open market. And if you remember, you were saying Bi is like that lower tier, starish, all star type of player. They think maybe they just don't like him, but I think they've liked him in the past. But knowing that they value Alperen Şengün more than him tells you where they feel like his market is going to be if they were to make a trade. I don't think it would be for a player like Bi. I think Şengün is clearly, in my opinion, the Rockets' best prospect because of the reason they wouldn't take a Bi for him because Bi is just a play finisher, right? He's a play finisher. The hardest thing to
He's
find.
a scorer.
Yeah, he's a scorer. He's a scorer, pretty one dimensional. Emil Doka used the term play starters and play finishers. I think the rarest thing in the NBA are guys that are both. A guy that could initiate a play and finish it, which is mean you can set up your team and go get a bucket yourself. That's a rare combination. Bi is not that. Şengün is that, right? And he's 21. So that should just tell you guys the value. Once again, some of these discussions people have, I think they look at it from different angles. Just from an asset standpoint, having a young player that can be a hub of an offense, no matter how anemic it looks sometimes, even the potential to be a hub of an offense and also be a guy that could be one of the best centers at scoring on his own is a pretty special player. And I think it was interesting that they just said nah straight up to Bi.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And if they're not bullshitting, right, which you would assume that they're not, but for credibility purposes around the league, if it's widely known, like, yo, the Pelicans really did try to engage the Rockets about Şengün and the Rockets were like, no, we're good. Then yeah, it kind of sets the marker for like, yo, if you want Alperen Şengün, it's not going to be a Bi, we're going to be talking something, a much larger package. And if not, then we're totally fine keeping Alperen Şengün. So I agree with you on that point. And I agree with you that like, yo, he can initiate plays and he can finish them. Now there are different tiers of these types of players. There's the Luke, there's the Luka, James Harden in his prime, LeBron, like there's the elite. And then there's guys that are not as good, but are still pretty damn good at it. Right now, Şengün is in that category, not as good, but still pretty damn good at it. And then obviously he's only 21 and there's crazy upside potentially. So I agree with you, man. It's interesting though, because like, how do they build this out? I really don't know. Like at this point, they had a successful season. People are happy, but the expectations, like I was thinking about it today, and we can do this in a later episode, but I was thinking about it today. I was like, what are my expectations for this team in terms of wins, losses? Are we talking 48 wins, 49 wins? Like what is success for next year's team? Because you're trying to think of building the team out right now. And I still think it's just wide open.
That'll be a great episode to do. I honestly, and to your point, yeah, definitely there's different tiers. And what I was saying earlier about Şengün, we need to find out what tier he's on. To me, the only stage you can find that out is on the playoff stage. As you guys see, the playoffs is a different brand of basketball than the regular season. And I know nothing about anybody on this Rockets roster till I see them in a playoff setting. That's the only thing.
The in-season tournament games, though,
he was balling, but nah. The Lakers won that championship. Did they even make the playoffs? I don't think they did.
No, they lost to Denver. I think they did.
First round, yeah. They got destroyed. But so that is something that I like. The build, it's wide open. I think I trust once again. I trust Ime. I trust the Rockets. That they have enough people that have seen enough basketball to know what's real and what's fake. I'm at the point in the rebuild where I'm open to all options. Like I said when I said earlier about patience, I think you have to try to get to being a playoff team as fast as possible, and then you wait over the years to all the heartbreaks and the losses, because those prepare you to get your shot. But if you're just looking on the outside looking in, it's never you're never doing anything because OKC is getting a Alex Caruso and there's teams. Wemby's getting better. The NBA does not wait for anybody. You can be as patient as you want. If you're patient and bad, teams are just going to pass you up. So the Rockets, they have to do whatever to get to the point where we can be in the discussions as a playoff contender. But what were you going to say?
I mean, look, yeah, windows are as fluid as they've ever been. You know, it used to be like, yo, you have the team that you have the baseline, like you have 4 or 5 years to figure it out. Now you could pop off and then disappear, right? Like the Mavericks are in a tough spot because they have crazy expectations now. And I'm not sure that they're a finals team next year. So it's like, what do they do? But what I was going to say is it's interesting. If you look at all the other drafts, right? The Rockets previously had been very tight-lipped. Previously had been very transparent about their desires, right? Like I said, it was pretty widely known that they were taking Jalen Green. It was pretty widely known that they were very interested in Paolo Banchero and thought he was going to fall to them at 3. Their interest in Amen Thompson, not a surprise, right? This time around, we don't really know, and we haven't heard much until today with the Klingon stuff, and it seems a little coordinated, which is fine, but it just feels a little bit different, right? We've heard nothing, and then now we hear from Kelly 6 days before the draft, right? It's like, that's interesting. Previously, it was filtering out like months in advance. And so that what I'm trying to say is that leads me to believe and to guess my opinion that they really are interested in trading this pick. In previous drafts, I think they were taxing. They were like, yo, yeah, we'll talk trade, but like we're taxing, right? Because we like this guy, Amen Thompson, right? Like we think this guy's awesome. So if you want the number 4 pick, you really got to give us, something serious. But this time around, it's like it just feels like a coordinated effort to create trade buzz, and people I think really don't know what the Rockets are doing, and so that could make teams behind them nervous and anxious to be like, man, we got to trade up, and and basically I'm saying I think that they're playing it right because I think they really do. I think this indicates to fans, if you've been paying attention for the last 4 years, that they really do want to make a trade, and they really want to go get a player out of that pick, which probably comes from Ime Udoka. And maybe it comes from everyone. Maybe everyone's on the same page. But I have this feeling that Ime Udoka is like, yo, I don't give a fuck about a prospect. Like, I'm trying to win. Especially, by the way, now that he just watched the Celtics, his previous team, win the championship. I'll bet you more than anything that more than ever right now, he's like, yo, I don't give a damn. I need to win. He's a competitive guy. So, yeah. So basically, I think that they are signaling, or if not, they're not they're signaling, but if you've been following, then you can read the tea leaves and see, oh, they really are interested in trading that pick this time. So I think they're going to try to get a deal done. Just my guess.
I'm with you. I'm team trade. I think to me, it's not a no brainer, but it just makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't, there's no player in this draft that if the Rockets didn't get him, even if they turned out to be good, that I'd be like, damn, unless all 6 of our prospects are all bust. So I think you have to factor in so many things. And I'm okay with if they trade back. If they draft a player, I'm cool with that. And if they go trade and try to trade out for a star, whatever they want to do, I think, like you said, house money. With that said, we can end it here. We got the draft coming up on next Wednesday, June 26th. Not as exciting to me. I mean, it is interesting to see what's going to happen, but our franchise isn't writing on it, so which is kind of a different take to look at. And you'll be doing, I think you'll be doing on playback. You'll be doing a draft stream. Is that correct?
I think so. I think we'll do a Rockets watch for the draft. If you have the time, if you're not busy, Frank could join me.
Yeah. I think I'll probably be able to come through, and I'm gonna put it in the community channel for our Chop Shop members, so you guys can come through and check it out. And hopefully next year we'll be doing some replays of certain games in the playback app as well. So we'll get you guys initiated into all that. But appreciate you, bro. I know it's been a minute, but it's the summer. We got real life. We'll be chopping up with you guys either before or right after the draft, seeing what the Rockets do. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop. We're going to keep dropping that.